This might actually be the creepiest story I've ever heard. Like, it made me feel violently ill when I heard this. It makes me feel sick thinking about it. Like, I just don't want to. So there's a woman and she lives with her boyfriend, but one day she's home alone and she gets a frantic knock on the door, and there's a woman equally as frantic saying, "My husband's in your house, you're not safe, you need to get out of the house." And this woman's like, "Love, I think you've got the wrong door. No one's in my house, it's just me." She ends up just shutting the door on this woman, being like, "No one here, love, don't worry about it." And this woman continues knocking on the door. She's knocking on the window, going around the house going, "Please, I don't know where he is, I don't know what he's capable of, you need to get out of the house." Naturally, when someone tells you this, you can be like, is there someone in my house? So she does like a sweep, and she looks in cupboards, under doors, usual places like behind the shower curtain where a murderer could potentially be hiding, I don't know. And she doesn't find anyone. And she goes to the door, and the woman's still there, and she's like, "There's no one in my house, I think you've got the wrong house, do you need me to call someone to come and pick you up?" And then this woman says, "You don't understand, he doesn't want you to find him." Says, he covers himself in lotion, right? He covers himself in lotion so you can't smell him, and he blends into his surroundings, and he can move his body in a way where he can fit into places where people shouldn't be fitting. So this girl's looking at this woman being like, "Okay, I'm going to call the police." And someone's like, "The police aren't going to do anything. I've called the police on him. I need to come in and show you where he is." And she's getting these red flags, being like, "I shouldn't let anyone in my house." She shuts the door and she calls her boyfriend, and she's like, "What do I do?" And he's like, "Call the police. Like, don't open the door to anyone. Don't let someone in the house. Call the police." She ignores him. For some reason, this woman just decides to sit down and carry on watching TV or whatever she was doing, I don't know. She carries on watching TV while this woman is like in a camping chair outside with a cigarette, like not joking, she's just waiting. Somehow she's focused on the TV, but she's paranoid and she's thinking, someone's watching me. And then she decides to follow every surface of her house to find anything out of shape. She goes up the cupboards, down, across tables, looks in corners, focusing on every detail. And when she gets to about a 20centimetre gap between her fridge and her wall, she notices something that looks like a finger bent out of place. I can't. She follows this bent looking finger, and then she sees something that looks like an arm. She continues to look up, and then she sees a head. There is a man standing in a 20centimetre gap between her fridge and her wall in such an unnatural position that it looks like he's slightly bent forward. His hands and his arms are bent in place where he's kind of like squashed, but he's also leaning forward. And she just says, "Sir, you need to get out of my house." He's just looking straight forward, straight through her, no blinking, no twitching, nothing, just doing what he's doing. I thought someone was behind me then. I told you it makes me feel ill. She continues to shout, "You need to get out of my house, you need to get out of my house." He's not doing it. Now the woman outside is saying, "I don't know what he's going to do now you found him. You need to get out of the house now." There's a problem though. She needs to go by him to exit the house. Somehow she ends up falling over and she lands right next to his feet, and he doesn't move. He's still just looking over her. She scrambles to the front door, opens the front door, and does the one bit of advice she should have done all along and call the police. 2 male police officers arrive. They do a thorough check on the house. No one's there, love. Can't see anyone. And both of these women are saying, "He's in the house. Like, I'm not going in there, but I can tell you exactly where he is." And they're like, "No one's in the house. We've searched everywhere. We can't find him." The police say, "If you don't feel safe, you shouldn't stay here tonight. But there's no one in your house. There's no evidence of anyone being in your house. If you see someone, call us, whatever." I don't know how delusional this woman is to be married to this guy, or how he got a wife in the first place. But she ends up saying to this girl that he's been practicing for a while not being able to move, and he's not alone. He found out how to do it on the internet because apparently there's a group of men that like to just stand still and watch people. Oh! The woman's boyfriend comes home and she says to him, "We're not staying in the house, there's a man in the house," and he thinks she's overreacting. Even the guy's wife is saying to the boyfriend, like, "You're not safe in there. I don't know what to do." But this guy's like, "Where do we go? Like, this is our house. We're not being scared out of a house by some crazy woman and a man that's apparently just watching us in the house. Like, what do you want me to do with this information?" The girl and this guy's wife end up texting each other. They become best mates, you know, and they end up meeting up with each other so she can practice or show her how to see this man and how he's hidden in plain sight. This woman teaches the girl how to see her husband, basically. But then she says, "Let's drive into the city and practice." Then this woman says in the space of about 2 hours, they saw 3 of these men hiding in plain sight. They're just watching and waiting. For what? Who knows? It just seems to me that the 2016 clowns have evolved and now they're doing something scarier. It's like a group of incels on the internet just want to scare people. But it's making me feel ill, violently sick. Like, I'd take a ghost and a demon any day over a creepy weirdo man. Do you know what I'm saying? If you've got a scary story or something you want to tell me, inbox me, hit me up on my email. But try to avoid telling me stories like this because I can't sleep most nights and I'm definitely not sleeping tonight.
The horror that happened to me in our village market, when I was warned never ever to walk through the village market after midnight, I did not listen and I did. The horror I saw and happened to me that very night, I still remember it like yesterday. So I'm warning you not to repeat same mistake as I did. Story time. We live in a very calm, quiet, small village. Everyone knows each other because it's very, very small. On the other hand, myself and my friends, we are the ones that do not listen. We are the village crooks. We don't listen to any warnings that the elders tells us, neither do our parents tells us. So, out of the blue, this strange looking old woman turned up at our village. No one has ever seen her. No one knows where she comes from. But she claimed that she's a pastor, a woman of God. So, on Sunday, after Sunday service, she came to us and she called my name. I have never introduced myself to her. I don't know how she knew my name. But anyway, she called my name and she told me that I should listen to warnings and never ignore them. I didn't listen. She said I should not go to the village market at midnight. I did not listen. She left. Myself and friends, we laughed at her. We mocked her. We thought, who is she, a stranger, to tell us what to do? Because remember, we never listen. Fast forward, we decided to go out clubbing. Then, after midnight, we were all tired. We decided to go home. My friends told me that we should get a taxi. I said no, because it's only a short walk. They said no, they're gonna get a taxi, and they did. I refused because I said I'm not spending money on a taxi. I decided to take the shortcut, which walks through the village market. And remember, this is after midnight. I took my shoes off and I started walking. When I got to the village market, I saw something strange, something very, very weird. Tell me why I saw a stall open at that time of the night. But then the weirdest thing is that I could hear butchering sound, like someone is butchering something, but I couldn't see anyone. Next to the stall, I saw rotten vegetables and it had blood dripping down. This scared me, but I walked really fast. Soon after, I heard someone call my name. I thought for a second maybe I'm hearing things. Then I hear my name being shouted again. I turned around. I didn't see anyone. But this time, the stall that I saw with rotten vegetables on didn't have rotten vegetables. It had human skulls on there. Soon, a dark figure appeared, stared at me, dead in the eyes. Now, I panicked. I started walking really, really fast. I turned around to check again. The dark figure wasn't there. The stall back to normal. Then I carried on walking, thinking maybe I was too drunk. Soon, I hear footsteps behind me. When I turned around, I didn't see anyone. Then I carried on walking, thinking it's just my mind playing tricks. Tell me why I heard my name call again. When I turned around this time, this dark figure with hair covering the face started crawling and following me. It wasn't walking, not running, but it was crawling on the ground. Now, fear gripped me. I started to run very fast. I got to the house. That is our house. I turned around and I didn't see the figure. I started banging on the door. No one heard me. No one opened. So, I heard my name again. This time, a lot of dark figures surrounding me. I screamed. The next thing I knew it, I blacked out completely. That was the last thing I remembered. The next morning, my parents woke up to a trail of blood coming from our house all the way to the village market. They panicked. They went to my room. They didn't see me. So they went and got a few village elders. They rushed to the village market. Upon arrival, following the trail of blood, they saw me right in front of the stall that I saw the human skull, that strange looking figure, whatever it was. I was laid there, my own pool of blood. I was unconscious. My parents rushed me to the hospital, but they said they saw a warning written in my blood on the stall saying they warned me, but I never listened. There's no next time for me. So people, listen to warning signs. Listen to warnings from your elders. Never go against your parents or your elders.
I got another Who or What Was I Dating story time. This is Lynn's story, and she said she wanted to share this to see what you all think was going on with this man that she dated. I don't know if it's paranormal. I don't know if this man was just out there, but you decide. So she said that she was living in Chicago, which is where I'm from, and she was there for years. She didn't really have success dating. She had gone on some dates with guys that she met, but she didn't really like the idea of apps just because she said she didn't want to end up a headline. But after a few years of being single, she kind of got lonely. She saw some of her friends on these dating apps that had success with it. Some even got engaged. And finally, when her best friend gets engaged, she's like, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. So she signs up for one of these apps, and she went on a few bad first dates, and she was just like, you know what, this isn't for me. But then one night she's just swiping because she's bored and she doesn't really think she's going to match with anybody, but this guy pops up and she recognized him because she had gone to summer camp with him in the state where she was from. She's also from the Midwest, not from Chicago, but it says that he's also in Chicago now. So she swipes at him because she's like, oh, I remember him. And more than anything, she remembered his eyes because they were very light blue. She said almost silver, and she always thought they were pretty. He was always nice to her when they were kids. I think it was like preteen, early teenage years when she knew him. So she said she swiped on him because even though she wasn't really into online dating, she thought because she actually had met him in real life that like they might be able to form more of a connection. And he was the type of person when she was a kid that he was the kind of guy that everybody had crushes on. She said he was tall, he was handsome, and he was like kind of friends with everybody. Like they weren't really close when they knew each other, but he was just nice to her. Like he was nice to everyone. The fact that she was familiar with him made her feel comfortable. So she swipes on him and they match immediately. And he messaged her right away. And he was like, oh, I can't believe I'm seeing you here after all these years, especially in Chicago when we're both from this small town. He says, do you still laugh at your own jokes? And she really liked that because she said that he remembered this small detail about her that made her feel validated and seen. After they match, he's like, well, here's my number if you want to text me. So she texts him, and she said they ended up staying up all night texting. Like they were having great conversations. He tells her that he moved away from the small town where they were from to the mountains. I'm not sure which mountains. And he was working on music, and he was just living alone in the woods basically. And he told her that it helps keep the noise down. And she thought he was saying this in like a poetic way, but she didn't really press him for information. But they talked for hours. So then he says, okay, well, I have to go to bed. Do you want to meet up? Like, are you free tomorrow? And she's like, yeah, I'm off tomorrow. Like we can meet up. So he says, let's go get coffee. And she's like, okay. So they meet at this coffee shop that she picks. He's like, what time do you want to meet? You want to go at like 3, 4? He's like, let's go at like 8. And she's like, 8 seems a little late for coffee, but like, okay. She gets there first. He walks in. She recognizes him right away. He sees her. He walks over. He gives her a hug. He sits down. They immediately start talking, going back and forth. The conversation is flowing. It's going great. They're sitting there for hours. And she said it hit her about halfway through that he looked great, but like better than great. It actually looked like he hadn't aged at all. Like obviously he was a man, but he had no fine lines, no wrinkles, nothing that would suggest that this man is pushing 35. But when she notices that like his skin seemed unnaturally smooth for his age, she tells him like, you look so good, like what is your secret? And he just like smiles and he's like, oh, it's just a lot of water, and it was like the wilderness did wonders for my soul. But she said she was like hypnotized almost by this conversation they were having, and he was just the type of person that made you want to like lean in and listen to every single word that he said. Like he had her on the edge of her seat. And at one point he reaches over and he touches her hand across the table. And she said when he touched her, she felt like a static jolt, like electricity. And she just thought like, maybe it's adrenaline, I don't know, but it was just, you know, when you touch someone and it's just, it shocks you, that happened. Finally, after a couple hours, coffee shop's closing, he gets up to give her a hug. He doesn't invite her back or anything like that. He doesn't ask if she wants to go get a drink. He just hugs her and he says, it's so good to be around someone who remembers me as human. And she thinks that's kind of weird, but she just hugs him goodbye. And she gets home and he texts her and he's like, oh, it was so great, like catching up with you. I'd love to see you again. She's like, cool. He's like, do you want to go on a hike in a couple days? Like we can go out to this one, it's like a 2-hour drive, but I'll drive, I'll pick you up, we can go. And she's like, oh yeah, I'd love that. But when that hike comes around, it's also at night. He wants to go at like 6 p.m., which maybe not night, but you know what I'm saying. They had a good time, nothing strange. But every time that she would see this man from that point on, she noticed like he would always want to go out after dark. They did go out in daytime sometimes, but she said he would like flinch at bright lights. And he also said he ran hot. Anytime she touched him, it felt like he just had a fever that never broke. Things were going good. They were dating. I don't know if it was exclusive at this point, but they were seeing a lot of each other. And one night they were just up talking. They didn't actually have plans that night, but he asked her if she wants to go for a walk near the lake. They're walking up and down Lake Michigan, and she said it sounded in the distance like she heard this low rumbling growl like coming from the lake. And he stopped and he listened to it, and she was like, what was that? And he's like, I think it's just the water talking. She thought that was weird too, but again, it wasn't enough to like be a deal breaker. So they keep dating, everything's going well, and after like a month or two, he asks her if she wants to come with him to his family's cabin in Michigan. She's she's like, you know what, hell yeah, it'll be so fun to get out of Chicago for a weekend, whatever. It's getting colder outside. So they end up driving. He drives her. It took a couple hours. They get up there, and she said the cabin was nice. It was small. There was no TV, no mirrors, like no photographs. It was just old books, animal skulls on the mantle. It was very clear that this was like a hunter's cabin or somebody who liked to be unbothered by the outside world when they were there. He poured her a drink, and he kept refilling her drink even before she finished it. And she was like laughing, like, oh, are you trying to get me drunk? She said they had a really fun night. Eventually they ended up in bed, and afterwards she could not shake the feeling that it was like lying next to a furnace. Like, he was so hot. She ends up saying something like, are you okay? Like, you're really warm. Do you have a fever? Do you need anything? And he's like, no, I'm fine. And then she said she started to feel woozy. She said she must have fallen asleep, and she woke up in the dark, and she looked next to her, and he was sitting up in bed, and she caught like the reflection of his eyes, and they were like an animal's, like shiny. And he was whispering to himself, and he was saying, not her, not now. She said he wasn't looking at her though, so she reaches across the bed, she touches him, and she said his head snapped to look at her. She said it was so fast that she actually jumped, and she caught a glimpse of his teeth, and she said, I know this sounds crazy, but they didn't even look like a human's teeth. Like, they looked too sharp. She said right after she touched him, he jumped up, slammed his head against the wall, and started whispering something to himself, and she couldn't make it out, but she was like, are you okay? She said his chest was heaving in and out with really sharp breaths, and she remembers thinking it looked like he was like fighting with himself, and he's like, I'm fine, you should go. She's like, where should I go? Like, you drove me here. I don't have a way to leave. And he's like, no, I'm like, not kidding. Like, you need to leave right now. She's like, I didn't know what to do. So she went on the front porch. She sat on the front porch, ended up calling her sister, who lived like an hour away from wherever they were. Her sister came and picked her up in the middle of the night. She tells her sister, who's a nurse, what all went on. And her sister's like, he might be having some kind of like mental break. Like, do you want to call somebody? Do you want to call an ambulance? Like, did he seem like he was dangerous? And she was like, no, I didn't get that vibe. Like, it was just very strange. And so she ends up texting him, and she's like, hey, are you okay? And he responds hours later at like 6 in the morning, and he just says, you were never supposed to see that. Sometimes I lose myself a little bit when the moon's too close. She really liked him, so she texts him back, and she's like, well, do you want to talk about it or anything? And he just responds, and he says, stay safe, okay? And that was the last she heard of this man. She ended up checking his online profile, like, I don't know, shortly after that, and his entire profile was gone. Like, I guess he unmatched her or deleted the whole thing. She's not sure. She could not find a trace of her. Like, her calls wouldn't go through, her texts wouldn't go through. Like, he just completely ghosted. But craziest thing about it is that she said that her sister, like a month after this all happened, her sister, who knew where she picked her up from, ends up sending her this article about this woman who had gone missing and been found in the woods where she picked her up from, where the cabin was. The report apparently said that it looked like an animal attack, but there were no tracks of any animal found nearby. Her sister said, you know, I just thought this was very strange. And like, there's nothing to tie that woman to this man, but it was just a strange coincidence that happened like very shortly after she experienced this with him. She said, I don't know, maybe he was just fighting something in his own head, because he had referenced it like when we first got coffee about, you know, him being in the woods keeps the voices down or keeps his head quiet. Like I said, she was sharing this to hear what you all thought, because she said, I don't know if I'm crazy for thinking that maybe whatever he was fighting was not just in his head. If you're new here, Spooky Scary Storytime is a series of allegedly true listener submitted stories about the creepiest things that ever happened to them. So if you have a story, I would love to hear it.
This is a scary but true babysitting story. My friend Allie had just graduated college, and she needed to make some extra money, so she put up ads in Craigslist offering babysitting services, and that was how she met this man named Caleb, who had 3 children. Caleb hires Allie, but he has rules she has to follow. No TV, no radio, no crayons, no drawing, no stuffed animals, no dolls, any kind of characters. They can't talk about their mother, go outside, leave the house, or talk to anyone outside the house. She said, well, what can they do? He said they can play with each other, they can play with their toys, board games, they can sing, but that's it. And she would later find out there was a big reason he had all those rules. Allie asked Caleb, what happened to the kid's mother? Where is she? Caleb said, we don't talk about her. She abandoned us. She's a junkie. She chose drugs over us, so I took the kids and moved, and I've been raising them by myself ever since. So within a few weeks of working there, her and Caleb hit it off, and they start dating. One day while babysitting, the youngest child starts talking about his mother and how the last time he saw her, she had a big boo-boo on her head and wouldn't wake up. And Allie said, what happened? Before he could answer, the oldest child came in the room and said, stop talking about mommy. You know daddy don't like it. We'll get in trouble. Allie said, no, honey, it's fine. You can talk about your mommy in front of me. I don't mind. I'd like to hear about her. And the oldest said, no, don't talk about mommy. We'll get in trouble. Like, she started crying. That hit Allie the wrong way. She said, look, when he gets home, I'm going to have a talk with him about this, because y'all should be allowed to talk about your own mother. And the oldest begged her, no, please don't tell daddy, please. But when Caleb got off work, Allie sent the kids to their room and she brought it up to him. Allie said, well, since I hear the kids can't even talk about their own own mother. Caleb said, no, I don't want them talking about that trash bag whore. I don't want her name brought up in my house. She left us. She abandoned them. Allie said, it's not right. You don't let them remember or talk about their own mother, and you bash her to their face like that. That's only hurting them. They love her. He said, well, she don't love them. She's not here, is she? She said, I get it. You're angry that she abandoned y'all, but that don't make what you're doing okay. He said, well, they're my kids and I'll do what I want with them. And if you don't like it, you can leave. So she left. Well, the next morning, Caleb called Allie and apologized and said, look, you're right. My kids should be able to talk about their mom and I want you to come back. Please come back. Fast forward a few months, Caleb and Allie are still together and now Allie is living with them full time. So Caleb tells Allie that he found out the kids' mother was trying to take the children back. So now he doesn't want Allie to leave the house unless he's with her, just in case the mom tries something. Allie said, why can't y'all just sit down and work this out and co-parent? He said, because my ex is crazy and strung out. She'll kidnap the kids and trade them for drugs. She's done it before. We have to keep them away from her and her family. One day they're at the grocery store when this woman walks up and says, hey Caleb, can I see the kids? And Caleb screams, no, leave us alone, and then grabs the kids and runs out to the car. Allie said, what the hell's going on? Who was that? Caleb said, that's my ex, their mother. I told you she was going to try to kidnap them. We can't take the kids out anymore. They have to stay home. Now Allie is at home full time with the kids, homeschooling them, and they're even calling her mommy, and she believes everything Caleb is telling her. So one day Allie goes to her mom's house to get the rest of her stuff, and her mom says, look, a PI came by here and said it's urgent they talk to you. Here's his card. He wants you to call him back ASAP. So she calls him back and he says, look, I'm a retired police officer, but I work as a PI and I'm helping the police with this cold case that I really need to talk to you about. They meet up and the PI asks, are you dating Caleb Blank? Allie said, yeah, for over a year now. Why? He said, because he's the main suspect in a missing person case. She said, who's missing? He said, the kid's mother. She disappeared a couple of years ago and the last people who saw her alive was Caleb and those kids, so we need to find her. Allie said, well, I can put all this to bed right now. She's alive. We saw her in a store a while back. She was trying to speak to the kids, but Caleb wouldn't let her. We left. The PI pulled out a picture and said, is this the woman you saw in the store? Allie said, yeah, that's her. The PI said, that's not his ex-wife. That's her sister, his sister-in-law. We sent her there to make contact with the kids, hoping they would say something about their mother, but it didn't work because y'all left. Every time the family and the police try to make contact, he won't allow it. We even sent CPS workers out to his house and he wouldn't open the door and he keeps moving. Allie said, well, he told me she was strung out really bad. The PI said, no, she was never on drugs. Her job regularly drug tested her and she always passed, and she was a damn good mother. She would never have left her kids like that. Allie said, can you show me a picture of the mother? So the PI showed her. Allie said, oh my God, Caleb's been lying to me about her this entire time. She said, well, why hasn't he been arrested? The PI said, because there's no body, no evidence. He won't cooperate with the police and he won't let the kids talk to the police. We have nothing. Well, we think he's going to unalive those kids at some point. Allie said, why would he do that? He said, because we think they witnessed their mother's murder. They're witnesses. And as of right now, those kids are the only thing linking him to this crime. 2 weeks ago, he filed life insurance policies on each child for $800,000 apiece, but not one on himself. Allie said, I swear I had no idea. Allie said, oh my God, it makes sense. He's got a cruise planned for next month and the kids don't want to go because they can't swim. They're scared to death of water, but he's making them go anyways. I thought he was making them go because we don't have a babysitter, but this could be it. The PI said that's probably what it is. So either you need to get out or get on board and help us catch him. Allie said, I love those kids like they're my own. I got to get them babies out of there. What do you need me to do? He said, we need to talk to those kids because they might can tell us where her body is and then we'll have enough evidence to arrest him, but you're the only one he leaves alone with them, so can you make that happen? She said, yeah. He said, whatever you do when you get back home, act normal, pretend like everything's fine. Don't make him suspicious. So all she had to do was play her cards right and act normal until he went to work the next morning, and that's what she did. So while Caleb was at work, Allie let the police in the house to talk to the kids, and they took the kids down to the station for a forensic interview. The tech gave the kids crayons and paper and said, I want you to draw me a picture of what you saw the last time you were with your mother. Where were you? What were y'all doing? The middle child said, no, we can't talk about mommy. Daddy will get mad. We'll get in trouble. The interviewer said, it's okay. You can talk about whatever you want here. It's a safe space. One of the kids drew a big blue square around the stick figure, and when the cop asked, what is that? The child said, that's mommy's blanket. It's keeping her warm because it's cold in that hole. Mama has a big boo-boo on her head. It won't stop bleeding and she can't wake up. She won't talk to us. One child even said, did anyone take mommy food? Did she have food on Thanksgiving? Who feeds mommy? How does she get food? Like, this child was very concerned about his mother eating. So the oldest child draws her mother as a stick figure in a blue barrel, and when they asked how did she get in there, she said daddy put her in the blue barrel because she was sleeping. The woman said, do you know where that barrel is? Where's your mommy? And the child said, at me, mom, papa's house. To my Caleb's parents' house on their property. You could tell these kids have been waiting so long to get this stuff off their chest. The police bring Caleb down to the station for an interview where he denies everything and even calls his kids delusional and a bunch of little liars. He even blames his in-laws like they're trying to set me up. If anything happened to her, they did it. So the police search the parents' property, and way out in the woods is where they find blue barrels and a shallow grave. The kids were right. Then Caleb tries to pin the crime on his father, but all the kids testified their grandfather was nowhere around. The only person there was Caleb and the kids. And it was proven with evidence his parents were not involved and they had no idea her body was on their property the entire time. The police uncover over a big blue tarp that she was wrapped up in, just like the child had told them, her blanket. Which means the children saw this, and when they asked their father what that tarp was, he told them it was a blanket to keep their mom warm while she was in that hole. How sick. And there was blunt force trauma to her head, neck, and face, just like the kid said. Initially, he put her in the blue barrel, but later came back and buried her in a shallow grave, and both times he brought the kids with him and even had them participate in disposing of their mom's body. It turned out Caleb had all those rules for his kids because he didn't want them talking about or drawing out scenes from the murder they witnessed. So Caleb was arrested, and the kids were put into foster care for a few weeks up until the mom's family gained custody. Caleb was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, and his parental rights were terminated. He's applied for parole several times, but has always been denied because he shows no remorse and takes no accountability. Oh, and the mom's family let Allie stay in the kids' lives because they were so appreciative of her solving their daughter's murder and putting that monster away. They got their grandkids back because of her.
Imagine you're a truck driver just doing your usual route. The only difference is that on this particular night, anytime you stop at a gas station, you come across the same creepy woman just standing there staring at you. Jorge had been a truck driver for the past 15 years and had never had anything really significant happen to him. This night was no different. He was very familiar with this route. He had done it a million times, and he had stopped at the same gas stations a million times. At his first stop, he happens to get out and he's like gassing up his truck. When he looks over, he sees a woman just standing there staring at him. He couldn't really make out her face. Her face was kind of covered by her hair. But you know when you have that gut-wrenching feeling that you're being watched? Like that's how he felt. It kind of threw him off, but he shrugged it off, continued putting gas in his truck, and left. Now, a few hours later, he stops at a second gas station. He gets out just like usual. When he looks over, he sees the same woman standing there, like the same clothes, the same posture. This time she's standing next to the ice machine and she's just watching him. This like really gives him chills, but once again, it's late at night. He just shrugs it off, figures that it must be just some like crazy coincidence, and he just leaves. Now, a few more hours go by. It's almost like daylight at this time. He stops at his third gas station. He gets out of his car and the woman is there. This time she's standing even closer to him. Every alarm bell in his body starts to go off. Like he gets chills. He gets like really anxious, almost into like a panic attack state. He calls his wife and tries to like get her to calm him down. He explains the whole situation and she tells him that maybe he's just hallucinating because he's tired, that maybe he should pull over and like take a nap, or maybe it's just like some crazy coincidence. She even made a joke like maybe it's just a woman that has a really big crush on you and has just been following you this whole night. He didn't really find that funny. That unfortunately would be the last time that she would ever hear her husband's voice. A few hours later, she received a phone call from the police letting her know that her husband had passed away. He drove straight off of an embankment, like straight off. There were no skid marks. There was no signs that he tried to brake. He literally just drove straight off into like a cliff and passed away. Thinking back to the conversation that she had with her husband that night, she now believes that what was following him was in fact death, escorting him to his final stop.
I used to do house calls in the hills of the Appalachian Mountains. Many of my patients lived off the grid in areas where they didn't have running water or electricity. Many times I wouldn't have cell service where I was, so I didn't have GPS, and I'd be navigating to their homes with the use of a map and the compass in my car. All of my stories are changed for the sake of HIPAA and for the sake of storytelling. I have not posted in a while because I was doing my homework, and with the current climate of things going on, I felt like it was far more important to put out content that people would find useful rather than sharing scary stories. I just don't think that it's the time for that. There's so many other things going on, and I wanted to make sure when I came back here, I had something to come back with, something helpful. So as you know, I currently work in the sitting setting, and aside from realizing because of some new social media posts, there's not enough resources for babies. So actually a couple of my patients are having trouble. So we have some baby formula. I've been packing up my daughter's clothes that she doesn't fit in anymore, getting those ready to drop off a few places because there are just some areas around me in need, and I would really love to have some of these things out of my house anyways. In addition, if you are in the Northeast Ohio area and you have issues with housing, with food, with being in a safe environment, there is Rescue Mission of the Mahoning Valley is a shelter located at 1300 MLK Boulevard in Youngstown, Ohio. They provide emergency housing and 3 hot meals a day with an open cafeteria that's open to the public for free. If you do not have food, if you do not have something, reach out to them. I also did some digging to find community resources for people who have children. Rescue Mission of the Mahoning Valley recommended that I have people reach out to ALTA, A-L-T-A, of the Mahoning Valley, and they have resources for mothers that need assistance, children that need assistance, and if they can't provide to you what you need, they will get you in contact with somebody who can. You can also call 211 for community resources. Also, I just want to make a point to say that someone mentioned, well, why would you work so far out in the hills of the Appalachian Mountains? So many things going on. That girl, her name starts with an N. I'm so sorry. I'll put her in my, link her in my post. She is calling churches and asking for a small can of baby formula for a baby that hasn't eaten since last night. I'm sure you've seen her posts. So many churches said no, okay? But you know who said yes? The black church, the mosque, and the little Appalachian grandpa, okay? These people would take the shirt off of their backs for you, these little Appalachian people, all right? So if what they need is for me to get to them so that they can have the things that they need at that point, that's what I was going to do, okay? And I don't do that anymore. The company I used to work for doesn't exist. But I just hope that gives you a better understanding of the quality of people out there. Just good people, okay? You guys hang in there. It's going to be okay. Make sure you utilize your local resources. We're all going to be all right. And I will come back with spooky stories once the climate feels more appropriate and we get everyone through this.
Want to get creeped out? This is a follower horror story revolving around black dogs, which are famous in folklore and basically bad omens or omens of death. Hi, you asked me to message you with some of my black dog stories, so here we go. I live very close to Sherwood Forest. Our towns are surrounded by woodland, and most places can feel quite isolated, even though you're often less than a mile from civilization. Many of the town's inhabitants were miners when I was growing up, and they were often coming and going at all hours of the day. One of the stories that stands out to me the most was my stepdad telling me about the black dog of Yorkshire. He often worked nights as the pay was better and was working with a miner named Pat, who had moved around a fair bit. This wasn't overly unusual. The mines were quite well connected by the coal board, but he moved often enough that it struck my dad as strange. Pat was originally from Yorkshire, but he had been out as far as Wales for work and back again. My stepdad, being quite blunt, asked him why he never stayed and settled anywhere. He refused to answer, just clammed up and wouldn't speak about it at all. Suspicion and rumor were often ridiculed in grueling jobs like that and the dangers they faced on a daily basis. Tunnels collapsed, electrical coils fell, cages dropped, and cart lines broke. The stories they all told of the ways they faced death daily were endless. Anyway, one day, my dad was on shift with him and his car broke down. They were on nights, which had them clocking off about 10 p.m. It was an icy winter that year. We'd already had a couple of snows, so Dad offered him a lift home. It wasn't a long drive, so Pat agreed. On the path to Pat's, the drive took them along the outskirts of Sherwood Forest. Sherwood Forest is old. I still live near there today. The trees are ancient and gnarled, and that's before we even begin to discuss the major oak or the legends of Robin Hood. As they passed, Pat began to get fidgety. He kept checking Dad's mirrors and looking up and down the tree line. This distracted Dad. He asked him what the problem was, but again, Pat would not speak. Eventually, Dad turned to look at him, taking his eyes off the road briefly to look at him. As he did, Pat screamed. Dad turned back just in time to slam on the brakes. In front of the car was a dog he claimed was the size of a small pony. Its eyes shone an unnatural yellow, reflecting brightly under his headlights, but the body of the dog was barely visible. It was so dark that it merged with the long shadows cast by the stoic forest. This is a good writer, the person who sent me this. It danced a little on its front paws before retreating to the underbrush of the trees. Both men sat in silence. The sense of unease my dad felt struck him right at his core, and he often said that it felt as though a block of ice had been forcefully rammed into his guts as the thing stared at him. When the shock had worn off, Dad shook it off and began driving again. He tried to strike up conversation, but Pat just stared straight ahead. Despite the coal dust that still coated his face, Dad said that he could tell that all the color had drained from Pat's face. He threatened to stop the car, and Pat became inconsolable. In his panic, he confessed that the black dog had haunted him ever since childhood. Every time it turned up, disaster followed. He said that he had to leave, and he had to leave leave now. Dad laughed it off. He didn't believe that it was anything to worry about. He had never been so wrong. Pat didn't turn up to work the next day. After Dad had left him, he began packing and already requested a transfer from the board by the time night started the next day. Something I should mention about my stepdad at this point. He was an electrician, a bit sparky they called them, and he worked on the big underground lifts that transported men and equipment to active coal seams. He was working on one with a colleague when the cabling snapped. The cable itself was thicker than an adult's thigh, and it wrapped around him faster and faster and falling into the shaft below. His colleague was a quick thinker, and luckily for Dad, he was throwing the loops off him as quickly as they were forming. If it hadn't been for that guy, he'd have been cut in two. God, that's terrifying. When he was finally clear, the two of them took off outside as they were very shaken up. They stood on the pit top and had a cigarette. Suddenly, Dad got that icy feeling in his gut again. He looked over the stretch of the tip, and in the distance, he could see the reflection of those strange yellow eyes. He swears that the incident was linked to the black dog. He said he felt like the thing wanted to make a point that not only was it real, but that if he didn't pay it the right respect, he wouldn't get the opportunity to tell the tale. He became a believer overnight. I'm lucky enough to live in a very old, very creepy part of the world. If you like stories like this, I'm happy to send you some of the others. The regulars at the haunted pub I worked in had a fair few stories of their own about black dogs, cryptids, and ghosts too. Definitely send us more stories. This was such a cool story, terrifying, but so cool. So yes, please send us more stories. Anyways, that's it for this one. See you next time.
This right here is one of the most beautiful places you will ever see. I mean, come on, look at it. I personally recommend you to go there. Okay, never mind. What the hell happened? The thing that you just saw and what you're seeing right now is a place called Roopkund in India. To keep it simple, it's a big-ass lake located out of nowhere in the mountains, and for the most of the year, this lake is frozen. So yeah, if you go right now, it will pretty much look like this, okay? Nothing but a frozen lake, but everything changes once the temperature rises. Because then, when the summer hits, you will see this. What is this? Human bones, by the way, skeletons, and let me explain how is that even possible. It all started in 1942 where a British explorer was exploring this area. I don't know what the hell was he doing here, but anyways. He was exploring these mountains, you know, that was his thing, and then he stumbled across this lake right here. So he was like, yeah, finally I can drink, I was thirsty. So he went down to the lake very excited, but that excitement didn't last because he saw human bones. So like anyone else, he freaked out, didn't stay one more second in that place, and then told everyone else about it. So this place started getting talked about. People were like, why are there skeletons covering the whole lake? And this is where scientists kicked in. They were like, okay, we got this. We can explain why is this happening. You see, this right here is happening because... Okay, we don't got this. At first, when scientists tried to explain this, they couldn't, okay? They didn't know shit, and in their defense, it was 1942. Scientific tools had their limits, okay? And when scientists saw this, they couldn't tell, so they were like, okay, we can't tell you exactly what's happening, but look, we have an idea. This right here was a battle. Yes, they told everybody that there was a huge amount of people back then, a long time ago, and these people kicked each other's asses. So in 1942, everybody believed them. They thought that they were telling the truth. Spoiler alert, they weren't. Many years later, scientists made a comeback. They were like, okay, now we have the advanced tools, we have what it takes to tell you what's happening here. Look, these right here are basically two groups of people, not one, two, because they have different DNAs. Okay, first of all, this skeleton right here, for example, is from a group who was here a long time ago, and they were South Asian. How do I know? Don't worry, bro, we made our research. DNA, bro, don't worry. Anyways, these South Asians. As you can see right here, in this skeleton right here, this person is different. Why? Don't ask me. I'm telling you, this person is different. You should believe me. And this person is Mediterranean. Okay, cool. Now that they identified where they came from, you know, where the skeletons came from, the question is, what the hell were they doing here? And why the hell they got unalived in this exact place? But for that, the answer of the scientist was like, look, y'all are asking too much. We don't know. I can tell you based on DNA where this person is from, but I can't tell you why is he here. You know, I wasn't there with him. So yeah, Roopkund, or the Skeleton's Lake, remains as a mystery because nobody knows exactly what happened to these people.
And this is why you don't stop looking for missing people, because sometimes, far and few between, but sometimes, even after years have passed, you do find them. That little girl never made it to school that morning. She was taken in broad daylight, and for the next 8 years, she would be kept hidden in an underground cellar that was built just for her. In 1998, 10-year-old Natasha Kampusch was living in Vienna, Austria. She was the youngest of 3 children and came from what most described as a normal but somewhat turbulent home. Her parents had recently separated, so there was a bit of family tension there, on top of the tension that was already felt because her mom was quite strict and she had a lot of high expectations. Natasha was living with her mother at the time of her abduction, and even though her mother has always said that she had a lot of love for her daughter, the environment that Natasha grew up in and the way that she was treated, it was not good for her mental health. But despite everything as a kid, she's been described to have been bright, kind, and independent. The morning of March 2nd in 1998 was a Monday. That morning, Natasha left her home and started her walk to school. And like I said, her mother was pretty strict. She never allowed Natasha to go anywhere by herself, let alone walk anywhere alone. But because Natasha was raised to be really independent, she wanted to be able to go to places by herself. And it took some convincing, but eventually her mom finally agreed to start letting her walk to school instead of driving her and dropping her off. That Monday was the very first day that she was allowed to walk to school by herself, but she left her house, disappeared, and no one would be able to find her for the next 8 years. When Natasha failed to show up back home at the time that she was supposed to, her mom called the school only to find out that she had never made it to school that day. Authorities were called and almost immediately a search ensued for her. Officers searched through the path that she would have taken from her house to the school. Neighbors were questioned. Fields were searched. They were looking through signs of where she could be, but also signs of anything that would show them what may have distracted her or stopped her from making it all the way to school. And then a 12-year-old little girl comes forward, a different little girl who had seen something that she knew was important. On her walk to school, she had seen Natasha. I don't know if she necessarily knew that it was Natasha, but she saw another little girl. And she told investigators that she saw that little girl being pushed into a white van by a man, confirming their worst fears. 10-year-old Natasha had been abducted in broad daylight. So now it was, find anyone who may drive a white van or anyone who may be connected to someone who drives a white van and question them. And they did. Authorities questioned over 1,000 different people with white vans, and they talked to all of them, yet days turned into weeks, that turned into months, that turned into years, with no sign of Natasha. So where was she? Well, when she had been around halfway into her walk to school, she had noticed a man standing awkwardly outside his open white delivery van near the sidewalk. Within seconds of walking past him, he had grabbed her, overpowered her, and threw her into the back of his van, closing the door shut and speeding off in the direction of his own home. The man responsible was 35-year-old Wolfgang. Is that like a common name? 35-year-old Wolfgang Pricklepill. He was a communications technician who had been stalking that area for days looking for his perfect victim. He drove Natasha to his home in a suburb called Strasshof. When they got there, he wrapped her up in a blue blanket and carried her inside into this tiny little cellar room that he had previously been preparing to keep his victim in. I think I may have mispronounced his name. I think his last name is pronounced Prickloppel, but Prickloppel referred to that room as his dungeon, and it was through a small trapdoor in the garage, down some stairs, so underground, through a hollowed out concrete wall that was on the other side of a small metal hatch, and that was all hidden behind a cabinet. The cellar itself was also soundproof, so it was like underground in a room within a room. It was so hidden and well secure that it took them almost an hour to get inside. But when they did, they walked into the room that Prickloppel had prepared. And you know what is so scary to think about? If something had happened to Prickloppel, if he passed away or decided to move away, Natasha would stay in that room completely alone, trapped. She probably would have passed away from lack of food or water before anyone found her, if they even found her at all, because that room she was kept in was so small and it was so well hidden. It was 5 by 5 meters, soundproofed and windowless, cluttered with a bed, a toilet, what was supposed to be a small tiny little desk I guess, and a small makeshift plastic ventilator fan. That fan was just barely enough to keep some sort of air circulation in the room, and it also made the most annoying rattling sound 24/7. Add to that the fact that the lights were almost always, in the beginning, were almost always on 24/7. I mean, those two things alone with nothing else to distract you would be enough to drive someone to insanity. And Prickloppel, by the way, he wasn't a smart guy, okay? I think a lot of his brain power went unused, but he did have experience in construction, which is what he put to use when he was building this underground cellar. Once they were inside, he took her shoes and her backpack. When she pleaded with him to be able to keep her backpack, Prickloppel responded by saying that she couldn't keep it because she could have a hidden transmitter in her backpack that she would be planning on using to be able to call for help, which doesn't really make sense, but he doesn't really make sense. Natasha then asked him if he was going to SA her, to which he responded by saying, "No, you are too young for that." For her first 4 years in that cellar, Prickloppel mistreated her in such a sick way psychologically, but he never touched her. And even though Natasha was only 10 years old, she had watched TV, she had seen things on the news, she knew why men like Prickloppel stole little girls, and she knew what they did to the little girls once they took them, so she was mentally preparing herself for the worst, and she was caught completely off guard when, instead of what she was expecting, he turned to her and asked her if there was anything he could get her to make her feel more comfortable. He went out and got her a new mattress, a toothbrush, a hairbrush, books, toys, cookies, and as days passed and then weeks passed, they fell into this routine in which Prickloppel would come down, bring her food, bring her more cookies, bring her dessert, more books, more toys, different snacks, even hot plates that she could have for dinner. And over time, the quote-unquote presents that he would bring down for her became very random, being things such as mouthwash and tape, but still, he would give her the things that she would ask for. So it was so confusing, so scary, but also so weird, because the fact of the matter was that he abducted her in broad daylight, basically stole her away from all her family and friends, and took everything away that made her her, holding her and hiding her out got from the outside world, yet he acted like he was almost being nice to her, reading her bedtime stories, feeding her, helping her paint, homeschooling her, teaching her math and English to make up for everything that she was missing out on in school. But then at times he would snap and his behavior would change, and he would yell at her, and he would withhold food and water for days and tell her about this group of men that would come and get her and take her away forever if she didn't listen to everything that he told her to do. He also often told her that he was an Egyptian god and that things would just be easier for the both of them if she just listened to him. Yeah, okay. It's so psychologically twisted and such weird behavior. The way that Natasha learned how to deal with it as a survival tactic was to put herself in the mind of a toddler almost, pretending that she was a younger child who did need help, or just imagining things that were not real just to keep her sanity. For example, when he would bathe her, she would pretend that she was at a spa. When he would spoon feed her instead of letting her feed herself, she would think that maybe she did need the help. When he would read her bedtime stories, she would imagine herself as a little girl whose dad was reading stories for her. When he would bring her gifts, she would think of him as a gentleman, convincing herself that everything he was doing to her because he was kind. And for Natasha, again, keep in mind she was only 10 years old when she was taken, but this new reality of hers was even more confusing, not only because of how hot and cold Prokopal was towards her and because of how quote-unquote nice he was in the beginning, but also because the only thing that she could compare this new life to was to her old life. And remember, I told you back at home before she was abducted, she was struggling with her mental health because of her mother. Natasha was a loved child, by the way. Her parents did love her, but her mom was really hard on her. She's described her to have been a quote brutal mom, and she's also said that she had a hard time dealing with her parents' divorce that left her feeling kind of lonely and empty. So she went from feeling like her mom never really paid her attention to now living with this guy whose sole purpose was to shower her with gifts and visit her and bring her food and give her attention. But she also knew that at the end of the day, he was her abductor. So everything felt very confusing, and you can understand as to why to a little girl, all of that combined would have affected the perception that Natasha had of the role that Prokopal played in her life. And like a lot of perpetrators in cases such as this one, the most important thing to Prokopal was remaining in control. Whatever he said, Natasha did. And because she would go along with it, over time Prokopal started to trust her more and more, and eventually he started to let her come out of the cellar and into the actual house. There were still rules to follow, don't get me wrong. Every single window, shade, and curtain was always closed. Every single door was always locked. When Natasha was allowed to come upstairs, she also had to have a plastic bag over her head to make sure that none of her hair fell out and onto the floor to further minimize the chances of there being any trace of her inside of the house. She also wasn't allowed to touch anything because her fingerprints could not be on anything. But he would let her come upstairs at times, and eventually he started to take her out of the house to run errands with him or just to get out and spend some time outside together. He once took her skiing for the day. I think in total he took her out of the house a total of 13 times, but by that point Natasha had been so brainwashed and trained to fear Prokopal that she wouldn't even consider trying to ask for help. First of all, because he was always right next to her, never losing sight of her, but also because the things that he would tell her that would happen to her if she did try to escape or tell someone that she needed help. So anytime they would be outside, Natasha would just keep her held down and do everything in her power to draw the least amount of attention towards her. Not to mention, years had passed, Natasha had grown up. She no longer looked like the little girl that was on the missing persons poster. So even if and when people saw her, they would report sightings of her to authorities. There was no way of saying for sure that that was her, that the person that they saw was Natasha, because no one apart from her abductor knew what she looked like anymore. So they would go out, they would come back home, Natasha would go right back into her cellar, locked away in that tiny little room away from the world. As Prokopal began trusting Natasha more and more throughout the years, those small moments of freedom that he allowed her came with an even darker cost, because by the time that she was in her teenage years, the things that he would do to her and demanded of her had turned physical, all while the psychological part of it was also getting worse. Prokopal would intentionally physically hurt her. He would deny her food and water for days at a time. He started bringing her upstairs to clean his house and do chores. He would remind her all the time that she was only allowed to speak when spoken to. He ended up installing an intercom in the cellar that he would use to yell insults at her from his bedroom upstairs all throughout the night to keep her awake. And even though Natasha has never gone into detail about the SA, she said this in a book that she later wrote called 3096 Days in Captivity. It reads, quote, "It wasn't about he wanted to cuddle. I was something to hold tight to in the night," end quote. So he was awful when he wanted to be so and when he wanted to be in a bad mood, yet he would still experience his quote-unquote good moods. And when he was in a good mood, he would talk to Natasha about what it would look like for them to build what he called a normal life together. He would talk about them being a family together. He would bring up the idea of giving her fake documents to give her a different identity so they could live their happily ever after. He really truly thought that the possibility of them becoming a family together was a real one. This is a quote from from Natasha when talking about this, quote, "I think he really trusted me. He was able to communicate with me to act out his illness. I think he wanted to create his own little perfect world with a person who could be there just for him," end quote. But no matter how much he tried to blur the lines, Natasha knew exactly what she was, a victim trying to survive. And early on, she made a promise to herself, telling herself that even though she was too young now, when she turned 18, she would find enough confidence and strength and power within herself to escape. She told herself that now all she had to do was survive, take it day by day, doing what she was told, until one day she would be able to gather up the courage to leave. Back at home, Natasha's mom did everything she could to hold on to hope, even though investigators told her to start looking for a grave for Natasha, making it sound like there was no possibility that they would be able to find her alive now. But her mom continued to bake her cakes for her birthday every year, trying to hold on to the idea that her daughter would one day come home. And it makes me so happy to say that one day she would. Natasha Kampusch turned 18 years old, and she told herself that it was now or never. She could not deal with Proklopil anymore. She had had enough. She could tell that he was mentally ill and that his illness was only getting worse. It was too much. And in her book, she wrote, quote, "He became more and more erratic and uncontrolled. His outbursts of rage became more frequent. He naturally blamed me and fell into an utterly paranoid delusional state," end quote. So after her 18th birthday, she started coming up with a plan on how she was going to be able to escape. And one day on August 23rd of 2006, when they were both in the garden, Natasha was vacuuming his car and Proklopil was watching her. And then he got a phone call, and because of the vacuum, he couldn't hear it well. So he stepped out of the room, which is when Natasha noticed that the gate leading to the street was unlocked. And she opened it and she ran. I have goosebumps. With everything in her, she started running frantically, tears streaming down her face, trying to flag down any strangers to be able to beg them to call the police. The police was called, and Natasha told them everything. She told them about the room that she had been kept in for the last 8 years. She told them about the house. She was able to give them the exact address. She told them about Proklopil, and she took the first breath of fresh air, finally relaxed, finally feeling like she was safe for the first time in years. And as you can imagine, authorities were absolutely shocked. They rushed over to Proklopil's house. They didn't find him, but they found the room exactly where Natasha said that it would be, confirming that everything she had told, her entire story, was more than true. Within minutes of her escape, Proklopil had noticed that she was gone, and he decided to go to the nearest train tracks and lie down on them until a train ran completely over his head, ending his life. Natasha's story broke in the media, and it was everything that everyone was talking about. And while you had the people that were so supportive, so over the moon, not only for Natasha, but also for her family, and looked at her as brave and strong and held a lot of respect for her, you also had the nasty side of the media of people that were saying, oh, because she was there for 8 years, she must have liked being a victim. She must have enjoyed it because she did not run away sooner. And because there were things that Natasha did not want to go into detail about, such as the details of her essay, understandably so, because why would you want to tell the entire world about the worst thing that you've ever been through? But because of that, the nasty side of the media started saying, oh, she must have not had it that bad, completely twisting the narrative of her own story. It's gross. It's insane. Seriously. And people began writing letters to Natasha, grown men writing these letters, trying to bribe her to come and live with them. It's so disturbing that with such a heroic story, a survival story, you still have the disgusting people choosing to see the situation in the sick ways that they want to. One of the letters she received read, quote, "You could come live with me and help me with the housework. I'm offering board, wages, and lodging. Although I'm married, I'm sure we will find an agreement," end quote. Like, what do you actually mean? Because how do you look at her story and think, how can I make this about myself? How can I make her my victim because her abductor is now gone? It's beyond me. After her escape, when she was asked about how she felt that so many people now knew her name and her face and recognized her, she said that she found it bothersome and disturbing, saying, quote, "I knew when I was in the dungeon that the story would make me famous, but I thought it would be more of a positive experience, like winning the Olympics. You're in the media once, people admire you, and then it's over and done with. I never thought I'd meet so many unpleasantly curious people who refuse to keep their distance from me, who are uneducated. I have many personal complexes as well, so being such a well-recognized figure just adds to that," end quote. Today, Natasha, I believe, is still living in Austria. She actually ended up buying the house that she was once held captive in. She decided to purchase it after her escape, which I know hearing that would make a lot of people feel weird, but she bought it to make sure that it did not become some sort of shrine of sorts or like a museum that people could go to and look at the cellar and the dungeon. She bought the house because she did not want someone else to buy it and then sensationalize her story in the way that they wanted to. But I don't think she lives in the house. I think it's like a second house. Maybe she lives there sometimes, but I don't think that's like her primary house. She has worked as an author and public figure, speaking out about her personal experiences and what recovery looks like for her. And she has said that she is no longer willing to be defined by what happened to her, but rather how she chose to survive. Yeah, I have so much respect for her, because what an incredible story. I mean, obviously horrific, but you know what I'm trying to say. But that is all for me today. Thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Natasha's story. I also wanted to say at the end of this video that obviously we know that there are a lot of horrible people in the world. Trust me, I'm the first one to say that the world is a really scary place. I'm kind of scared of everything. But I always see in my comment section people talking about how scary the world is and how bad it is nowadays. Just wanted this to be a reminder that, like, trust me, I know, but also there are so many good people in the world. And we talk about these stories to bring awareness so that the good people like me and you can stay away from the scary bad people. But important to know and not to forget that there are a lot of good people in the world, nice people, kind people with big hearts, happy people. There is just as much beauty in the world as there is darkness. So it's important to pay attention to the good and keep that in mind, or else we would all go insane. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
Scary story time, men in the attic edition. I get sent a lot of men in the attics, and it's kind of creepy. But try to activate the slime with me because I suck at making slime. So this man moves his entire family to the other side of the country. It always starts like that, right? Now, they move into this old Victorian home that was built back in like the 1920s. And very quickly into moving in, basically the first week, the wife starts noticing these weird tapping noises. And the husband is trying to tell her, like, yo, like, chill, like, it's an old house, you know, old houses make weird noises. I hate when people say that. But yeah, he tells her this, and nonetheless, she kind of stops tripping about it because this noises stop until 3 weeks later, and now they're not hearing tapping, they're hearing footsteps above their head. So now this is really freaking the mom out, and she's like, no, like, this is weird, like, we have to do something about this. And then again, the kids are like, it's an old Victorian house, like, there's probably ghosts. So one day the daughter is outside chilling with her brother, and the brother goes, what, like, there's a window up there, that means there has to be an attic. So basically, get off of my hand, I'm getting overstimulated. So the kids bring this to the dad's, like, you know, perspective? No. Attention. And so he goes, okay, yeah, there has to be an attic, and that's probably where the weird noise, you know, is coming from. It's probably mice or raccoons or whatever up there. So they could not find the door to the attic. They asked the freaking real estate agent. They looked over old blueprints of the house, and this door to the attic seemed to be pretty much useless. They couldn't find it, so they just kind of forgot about it. Up until a month later, when the daughter hears a weird noise, okay, in her closet. And so she goes and tells her brother, and the brother goes to see what the noise is, and they notice that there's a door, okay, like, kind of, I can't even explain it, but there's a door in her closet. And so they get the parents, and the parents go up there. Y'all, there was a man in basically above the daughter's bedroom. And the attic, like, spans across the whole, like, all of their bedrooms, basically. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, okay, I'm telling y'all how the story was told to me. So it goes above all of their bedrooms, and so he literally just had a full-on, basically, master bedroom in the attic. And he had food, he had stolen clothes from them, like, y'all, he was up there. The police came and they arrested him, and the amount of stories that are like this, that are real, are insane. Get off of my hand. It's definitely starting to activate more, but, like, goodness gracious, look, it turned into a monster. Okay, I can't. I'm overstimulated.
Let's read another scary story that was DM'd to me. It was nighttime and my parents were not home and not close by since we live in a small village and they went shopping in the big city. I was home alone that day with my dog and we were both chilling in the living room. Since it was winter, it became dark outside very quickly, and I have to mention that the living room is right in front of our porch and you can look outside from a big window. I was watching TV when I heard sounds coming from the porch, but I didn't bother to check because I thought it was probably just the neighbor's cat. I couldn't see anything though since our curtains covered the view outside. After a while, I started feeling a little weird and noticed that my dog was shaking and a little out of it, which only happens during fireworks or whatever. I started to feel like I was being watched and went upstairs into my room and took my dog with me. He didn't calm down, and after a while I called my mom, but she didn't pick up the phone. I genuinely freaked out but kept telling myself it was probably just an animal. After a while, I heard someone messing with the doorknob, and to be honest, I don't know what possessed me to leave my room and go downstairs again. I grabbed a glass bottle to protect myself and approached the door. I screamed that I called the police, but for some reason I didn't, and that they should go away. The doorknob kept being jerked by somebody, so I went to the window I mentioned before to look outside, and there was no one.
just the doorknob moving by itself. My dog came down by now, still acting super weird. I opened the door and it stopped. I walked a little across the yard since I had no idea what was going on, thinking I'd find a reasonable explanation. Suddenly, I heard a noise of something breaking and my dog started barking at something very loudly. I turned around and saw our wooden cross, which was hanging on our porch, broken in half on the floor, and I ran inside. I was panicking like crazy, trying to calm my dog down while calling my parents. Half an hour later, they were home and I told them everything. My mom is really religious and started pacing around the house while shouting prayers. My dad was convinced that it was just someone messing with me or someone trying to break in. I still don't know what happened. I just know my dog's reaction must have meant something and everything feels so disturbing to me. This happened in the UK, by the way. This person wants to stay anonymous, but they did tell me that after the cross broke, their mom bought a new cross to replace it, and it fell down and broke the same day that their mom brought it home. And then their mom started spraying holy water all over the front porch, and since then, nothing has happened. So I guess the holy water is working. Thank goodness.
It was a very normal day for Peggy Jones, and she was not ready for what was about to happen. So the day starts with her mowing her lawn. Now she had a very big property. So she's on her tractor mowing the lawn, just enjoying the day, when suddenly something falls onto her arm. She looks down and she was absolutely horrified to see that there was a snake wrapped around her arm. All she could say is that this snake literally fell from the sky and was now tightly wrapping itself around her arm. Obviously, like most people, she started freaking out. She started flailing her arms around. She did everything she could to get the snake off, but the exact opposite happened. The snake was starting to wrap around her arm even tighter. And the snake even tried striking at her face multiple times, striking her glasses. And just when she thought the whole thing couldn't get any worse, it did. And again, what seemed like out of nowhere, a giant hawk swooped down and also started attacking her arm. Peggy was in absolute hysterics at this point. I mean, who wouldn't be? All she could do was scream, "Help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus." And she quickly realized what had happened. It seemed like the hawk had caught a snake for dinner, but had dropped it and it fell onto Peggy's arm. And then once it realized where the snake had dropped, it swooped down to try to recover its dinner. And it possibly could have even thought that Peggy was some sort of threat or competition to its meal, so it started attacking her. Eventually, the hawk did manage to grab the snake again and flew off, but it left some serious damage. Now, I can't show you the picture because it is pretty graphic, but essentially, all of the talons from the bird had done a pretty insane job of ripping apart Peggy's arm. Not to mention that her arm was also incredibly bruised by how tight the snake had managed to wrap itself around her. And during the entire attack, she somehow managed to drive herself back to her home where she told her husband what had happened. But obviously she was screaming, he could barely understand her, but he noticed that she obviously needed medical attention. And when she got to the hospital, she was still completely hysterical to the point where doctors thought that maybe she could have been on some sort of drug. But when they realized what had happened, they quickly went into action, treating her arms. And as terrifying as the whole situation was, Peggy was very lucky that it wasn't any worse.